Hey y'all, it's Michael Laxer coming to you from Toronto on August 24th. Yesterday, August 23rd, has become one of the most odious days in the calendar because it is what has been called Black Ribbon Day. Now, Black Ribbon Day, of course, is supposedly some, attempt to uh, basically honor the victims, quote unquote, of communism and allegedly also of Nazism. But in reality, what it has become and what it always was meant to be is an attempt to equate communism and Nazism. And it's also an attempt, to propagate anti communist myths, lies, and propaganda. Black Ribbon Day is an outright fascist lie, and it's total bullshit. And interestingly and disgracefully, it's ahistorical fascist fiction that is widely supported by Western liberals and social democrats, who, as always, are facilitators of uh, the growth of fascism through their virulent anti communism and their buying into and furthering of anti communist lies. Um, I don't even know where to begin properly about a Black Ribbon Day, but basically, what you're looking at is something promoted by Eastern European nationalists and the European far right and right, that sort of seek to claim that communist governments that sought to create universal housing, jobs for all, free education at every level, and that supported national liberation movements around the world are akin to the Nazis. And this is entirely to justify um, the past collaboration of many Eastern European nationalists in mass genocide. And liberal social democrats going along with this lie do so at their peril, but they are going along with it. If you really have any doubt that Black Ribbon Day is in reality aimed at communist history as opposed to the Nazis, a great example is the former Deputy Prime Minister of Canada, Chrystia Freeland, who on Black Ribbon Day itself tweeted many years ago now, several years ago now, tweeted about how proud she was of her grandfather's commitment to freedom and democracy in Ukraine, despite the fact that she actually knew he had collaborated with the Nazis. Her grandfather was the editor of a virulently anti-Semitic publication that supported the Nazi invasion of the USSR, the mass killings in Ukraine, and the war effort against the Allies, and a newspaper that was printed on a press stolen from a Jewish family that was killed in the Holocaust. All of this is fact, not Russian propaganda, as they first tried to claim. And in fact, a link that will be provided in the comments to a Left Chapter article that I wrote about this back when the Left Chapter was still the blog spot, um, shows this conclusively. And many other publications also expose this. But she has never apologized for doing this and has never been held to account for doing this. She's no longer in office, but that had nothing to do with this. And the mainstream media largely ignored it at the time. And now in the US, we see the new McCarthyite anti communist crusade by the fascist, dim witted duo of Trump and Rubio. And every liberal and social democrat going along with the lies of Black Ribbon Day directly reinforce and support campaigns like this in their typical sort of social fascist way. Our own right now, our own con man Carney here in Canada has completely capitulated to Trump around the issue of Cuba and the increasingly overtly genocidal blockade that the Cuban people are suffering in an attempt to crush once and for all the revolution and bring down the Communist Party. But I mean, frankly, when you have, uh, you know, simplistic and moronic anti-communist propaganda like that we hear every so-called Black Ribbon Day, um, it is an example of how simplistic liberal anti-communism is a literal facilitator of fascism. When Rubio and Trump are ranting and tag teaming on about the gigantic communist threat, it's significantly harder to push back against their fascist campaign when you have lots of liberals and social democrats going along with the rewriting of history to make out communists as one of the ultimate evils of the 20th century. But, let's make something clear. There was no greater force in the 20th century for human emancipation from colonialism and imperialism than the Soviet Union and the international communist movement. That is a fact. There was nothing fascist, Nazi, or anti human about that. That's a fact. And the loss of the Soviet Union was a tremendous blow to the anti imperialist movement globally and to the national liberation movement globally. Um, it's a tragedy that the USSR fell due to counter revolution from above, and that's what it was, and that the international communist movement is a shadow of its former self. But it is absolutely essential to push back against anti communist propaganda, like we hear every quote unquote Black Ribbon Day, and that we regularly hear in the media with countless and ludicrous lies about the Soviet Union in all of its periods, including during the Stalin era. One of those lies, of course, and the alleged basis for Black Ribbon Day, is around the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, which, it was a non-aggression pact that happened in a very specific context, and in a context where the Soviet Union had been seeking for years an alliance with Britain and France against Nazi Germany and its expansion plans, and felt under direct threat at any time from Nazi Germany. And when they could not make a pact with the Western powers, they tried to stave off a war with Nazi Germany, an invasion by Nazi Germany, through this non-aggression pact. It happened in a very specific context. It's lied about all the time. And actually, and again, I will link to this in the comments, and you can find it on the Left Chapter's Facebook page. There was an excellent pushback and setting of the record straight by the Marxist-Leninist Party of Canada, the Communist Party of Canada, Marxist-Leninist, it's sometimes known as CPCML, and in a statement they made where they talk precisely about how the way it's framed is false. I mean, as they point out, reactionaries today use the anniversary of the Non-Aggression Pact to slander the great deeds of the Soviet Union by repeating claims which falsify history. That is absolutely true. And they point out that equating the Soviet Union's unrelenting battle to defeat Nazi aggression with Nazi war crimes serves a nefarious purpose of protecting the neo-Nazis and attacking Russia today. And if anyone doubts that this Black Ribbon Day is also about attacking Russia today, make no mistake that that's absolutely correct. The CPCML is completely correct about this, because in 2022, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who's a total twit, frankly, highlighted the Remembrance Day's importance in standing against, quote, Russia's illegal and unjustified war against Ukraine, end quote, even though, of course, that war has literally nothing to do with either communism or the Soviet Union or with Nazism. So it's an absurd attempt to link these things together. Russia is not the Soviet Union. It is no longer a communist country. In fact, it's a profoundly anti-communist country. But beyond that, you can see how Black Ribbon Day is meant to serve present day ideological purposes for the right and the far right and for Eastern European nationalists. It is complete historical fiction. It's a lie from start to finish, and it should always be pushed back against, as with all the other lies we hear about the Soviet Union and the former socialist bloc. Sometimes people ask me, why do you feel it's so important to set the historical record straight about the Soviet Union, given how long ago it fell, given the victory, sadly, of the counter-revolution from above? Well, this is why it's important. It's important to push back against the lies and falsifications of history because these are anti-communist and anti-socialist lies and falsifications. Black Ribbon Day is complete, utter fascist horseshit and nonsense on every level, and it should never be honored or celebrated, however you want to phrase it. It should be condemned and pushed back against whenever the opportunity arises. At any rate, hope you are all doing well wherever you may be. Love and solidarity, comrades, and I genuinely hope to be talking with you again soon.